So good afternoon, very good afternoon, everyone. Today we are going to start the third week of this course on ecology, environment, and sustainability, which is environmental pollution. So today I'm going to speak on the topic water pollution, its causes, effects, and mitigation. So basically, we'll be covering, and I'll also be showing you about a few. We'll be talking about a few case studies. So I'm going to start my presentation now. I'm going to share my screen. In case something is not visible, you can inform me, because you'll have to unmute your mic, because I'll not be able to see what you people are writing. Okay. Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am, your screen is visible.
I hope it's visible.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am, your
It
screen
is,
is
ma'am.
visible.
So talking about water pollution, causes, effects, and control. So we'll be covering what is water pollution, what are the sources of water pollution, what are the effects, why are we worried about it, and how can we control it. So first of all of us know that water, three-fourths of the earth is covered with water. When we'll talk about in percentage, it is 71% of the earth is covered with water and 29% is land. So they say now water, water everywhere, but nowhere to drink. Once a British poet, W.H. Auden, said, thousands have lived without love, but not one without water. Yes, that is the importance of the water. This is the reason why there is life on earth. But then also, despite being a blue planet, we are facing the worst water scarcity in the history of human, or in the history of the earth. So why it is so? So one of the major reasons, or the single most major reason, is the water pollution. So what is water pollution? Water pollution is, or we can say that it occurs when the harmful substances like chemicals, nutrients, microorganisms, paints, dyes, fertilizers, pesticides, such kind of things contaminate or enter a stream, river, lake, ocean, aquifer, or other water bodies. That results in the degrading of the water quality, and that renders it toxic to the humans or the environment. So this is known as water pollution. Or in the simple terms, if I'll talk about, so water pollution is simply any undesirable change in the physico chemical properties of water. Okay. So as you can see, like, water pollution is something which is very much visible, and you see it everywhere around you, you see it, right? Yamuna, like, rivers are known as the lifeline of the cities. So Yamuna, which once known as the lifeline of Delhi, you can see that it has, just become a nala. It's a drain. It's not more than drain. The water quality has degraded a lot. So the pictures that you are seeing, the first and the second picture, these are the pictures that I have clicked during one of my visits to River Yamuna. So this is our very own River Yamuna in Delhi NCR region. And so basically, why? What is the major reason? Because everything is gone into the water bodies. So now when we talk about as I have told you, that any undesirable change in the physical chemical properties of water. So there's a huge list of the physical and chemical properties which determine the quality of the water. But when we talk about it, so I have just listed out the very important ones. Where it's not possible to, in a 2-hour lecture, to talk about so many things, and you'll not understand. So I have just pointed out, marked out, or a few very, very important physicochemical properties. So first of all, the pH. pH is the known as potentiality of hydrogen ion in scientific term, or in basic term I'll tell you, it determines the acidity or the alkalinity of a water body. So pH scale, all of you would have studied about. So it's a scale that measures the acidity and the basicity of any substance or component. So here, so the healthy pH of a water body is around neutral pH, 7 to slightly alkaline, 8.1 to 8.4, and it varies from water bodies to water bodies. Okay, then we have temperature. Temperature is also a very important parameter, because here I would like to talk something about that when we talk about high temperature or low temperature of our water bodies, guys, there is a property which is known as liquids, gases have one property which is known as solubility, right? So the solubility of gases in liquid is directly dependent on the temperature of a water body. So now you would think, why ma'am is talking about the solubility of water, solubility of gases in a water body? Because the gases do dissolve in water. And why I'm worried about it? Because all of you know that aquatic water bodies do have life. And what is the primary requisite for having a life anywhere is, it is oxygen. So basically, the water bodies do also have oxygen, and that oxygen is known as dissolved. That is known as dissolved oxygen. If you can see my cursor, so the dissolved oxygen. So basically, the primary requisite of life everywhere is oxygen, and the water bodies do also have oxygen in dissolved form, and that is the main reason why we have life in aquatic water, aquatic bodies, right? So now, how can, and the solubility of oxygen, or we can say the concentration of oxygen, is directly dependent on the temperature, because the colder the temperature will be, the higher would be the oxygen content. And dissolved oxygen is also known as DO in short form. So when in further, whenever we will be talking about, I'll be talking it as DO. So basically DO is inversely proportional to temperature. So what do we mean by inversely proportional? Means smaller the lower the temperature, higher would be the concentration of dissolved oxygen. So basically, whenever we have, in the mountains, when the rivers just start, from their point of origin, the water quality is very good in terms of temperature also. The temperature is very low. So here, there we have the oxygen content is very good in the water body. Okay. And as soon as the temperature of the water body increases, its capacity to hold the oxygen also decreases. So definitely lower the oxygen, that will adversely affect the life inside the water body. Then we have total dissolved solids. So this is also known as TDS. So total dissolved solid is the amount of solids, dissolved solids present in our water body. Dissolved solids की बात करें, so guys, basically it's, I didn't want to go into detail, so that's why I have not written it. But basically, total amount of solid that is present in a water body is known as total solid. And what is total solid? Total solid is a sum of total suspended solid and total dissolved solid. तो suspended solid क्या होता है? जो उसमें suspended रहते हैं, but they do not get dissolved. And what are total dissolved solids? ऐसी चीज जो पानी में घुल जाए, dissolve हो जाए. Like, we make a syrup, sugar syrup, when we mix. So basically, the soil or the sugar is getting dissolved in water. Or if you're making a solution with the salt in water, so the salt gets dissolved. So what happens? This majorly happens. This total dissolved solid, which is a parameter of the salinity of the water body. So ये जो salinity होती है, guys, salts do get dissolved. So generally salts are made of cations and anions. So whenever these things will get mixed, the salts break down into their ionic forms, cations and anions. That results in the another property which is written here, the electrical conductivity. Electrical conductivity किसी भी होने के लिए what you require positive charge and negative charge, right? So to allow the flow of the current. So basically that's what happens. So total dissolved solid and the electrical conductivity of a water body is actually directly related to each other. Okay, and these two things are the measure of the amount of salts present in a water body. So all of you must be knowing that there are various sources like fresh water should not have high amount of salts, because so that's why these two properties are also very good indicator of the water quality. We have already discussed about the dissolved oxygen. So dissolved oxygen is the oxygen present in a water body, right, in dissolved form. H2O, you can say H2O hai, but H2O is H2O because तो उसमें hydrogen and oxygen is there. But if you'll take out that O oxygen atom, it will not remain water. So that oxygen is not being used. Why I'm explaining this, because we have some undergraduate students also from various streams. So for your knowledge, I'm just telling. So the oxygen, dissolved oxygen, which is present in a water body, is used in respiration by the aquatic organisms. Okay. Then there is one more parameter. I'll be explaining in detail about the dissolved oxygen, the biochemical oxygen demand, and COD. So second thing is the biochemical or biological oxygen demand. This is also a very important parameters. So in basic or layman's language, a biochemical oxygen demand is the amount of oxygen required by aerobic organisms to degrade organic matter completely. Okay, so that is known as biochemical oxygen demand. For example, if there's a drain, okay, all of us know that there is biodegradable waste, there is non-biodegradable waste. Now everywhere waste management is in talk and everyone is talking about that. So most of all of you must be knowing about biodegradable waste and the non-biodegradable waste. So biodegradable waste is the waste which can be degraded by the microorganisms, right? So now, so for example, so biochemical oxygen demand, why are we worried about the, so it is the demand by decomposes the bacteria to degrade the organic waste present in a water body. So this biochemical oxygen demand or BOD is inversely related to the dissolved oxygen content. Obviously, guys, the supply is the dissolved oxygen and this BOD is the demand of oxygen, right? So because this nature has every cleaning mechanism for everything, so when any waste is being dumped in a water body, so bacteria starts to work on it. They try to degrade it, they try to eat it up to clean the water body again. So to do that, they require oxygen, more amount of oxygen, so that increases the BOD content. So basically the BOD or biochemical oxygen demand of a water body should be very less. It should not be much, right? So that is also a parameter of health of a water body. Then we have similar thing, a chemical oxygen demand. So what is this chemical oxygen demand? As you know that there are two types of waste, biodegradable and non-biodegradable. So what are non-biodegradable waste? Non-biodegradable waste are the waste which are not degraded by the biological organisms, right? So now when, but they also pollute. Yes, they are not being cleaned up by the natural mechanism, by the nature itself, but we have to clean it up. So for these, a strong oxidizing agent is used, okay, like sulfuric acid. As you know that acid can burn out or oxidize or degrade, in simple terms, everything. So there is a method. I don't want to talk about the technicalities very much. So basically with potassium dichromate, sulfuric acid is being used to calculate the chemical oxygen demand of the water body. Or we can say that it is the amount of oxygen required by a strong oxidizing agent to completely oxidize the total organic waste. Means biodegradable plus non-biodegradable. That is known as chemical oxygen demand. Then turbidity. Turbidity, though, it's like you can see and say turbidity means the clarity of water, right? If there are suspended solids in a water body, or soil or anything, so it will be turbid. So that is known as the turbidity. So obviously you will not drink turbid water. You need clean water to drink, or for other purposes also. So these are the basic properties which you should know. Why I've discussed about these, because I'll be using these like when we'll talk about further types of pollution. So we'll be talking about it. Okay, so these are the various types of physicochemical properties that actually affect the water quality. So why are we worried? Yes, we are worried about these things because according to a recent report of WHO on drinking water, or definitely because it's a primary source, so we require it for drinking and other household purposes. Even if we will take only drinking as a use of water, 1.4 billion people do not have safe drinking water, according to a recent report by WHO. Then around 10,000 people, 9,300 die daily from the waterborne diseases. And the cost of $23 billion to bring safe drinking water and sanitation to everywhere. Like, this is the cost of $23 billion to bring the safe drinking water to everyone. So this is how, because it's very important. We cannot survive without water. Okay, so now we know what is water pollution, right? How it affects, what are the um, physicochemical properties, and there is one thing. How do we get to know? Like a layman person, how a layman person would get to know if one is not an expert that there is pollution? So nature has provisions for everything for us. So there is something known as indicator species. So there are indicator species in the environment which indicate any slight change in the environment. So when we are talking about the pollution, indicator species is a species which you know uh, which can show the presence of pollution or contamination either by their presence or by their absence. Means if for example one of such species is given here, tortoise basically. Tortoise is saying, I live most of my life in the ocean, but I'm also dependent on the land. I have been around for about 150 million years ago. I'm an important part of both marine and beach dune ecosystems. I travel throughout the world's ocean. Lose me, and other parts of the ecosystem will also be gone. So basically, if so, here we are talking about the water. So I'll talk about that. If there is a water body, okay, so the presence of some sensitive fishes, right? So fishes or phytoplanktons. So phytoplanktons or green algae will actually indicate the presence of the like presence of a water of good quality in a water body. Similarly, so such a species which represent pollution by their presence, right? Like which who are present there. So and their present is showing that there is no pollution at all, right? So or whose absence say that there is indicate pollution. Such species are known as is sensitive species. There is another type of indicator species which are known as tolerant species. So if you'll see such type of species in a water body, that you can think of it as an early indicator for the presence of, or you can say that's the start of pollution in a water body, like tubifex, rotifers, worms. देखा ही होगा आपने, worms अगर हो जाते हैं किसी पानी में, so it said that it is unfit for consumption, or it is unfit for use, right? Then we have insect larvae. Such things, if are present, they will indicate the presence of pollution. Or there is one more species which is known as dragonflies. Dragonflies, though they are not aquatic, but dragonflies are present in healthy environments, and basically they lay their eggs where the your mosquitoes lay their eggs. They lay their eggs in the stagnant water bodies, okay, and their larvae eat mosquitoes larvae. So they are a biological control of mosquitoes. So they feed on mosquitoes, they clean your environment out of mosquitoes, and their larvae feed on the mosquito larvae. Okay, so they are a very good indicator. So now you get to know, for example, if you had a river inside near your house, or you used to find some good fishes species there. After a few years, you will see a significant decline in the diversity of those fishes. So that is an indicator, or early indicator, or early sign of that river or being contaminated. So there is still much time left to do something. So now let's talk about the sources. So whenever we talk about water pollution, so the sources of water pollution are broadly divided into two categories. One is the point source, the other one is the non-point sources of pollution. So point source of pollution means, as the name suggests, which, where the waste is entering a water body from one point, like a drain, right? A drain which is bringing the sewage or the wastewater, or a drain which is dumping the industrial waste into the water body, means they are the identifiable sources of pollution, right? Similarly, we have non-point sources which are discrete in nature. They're not identifiable. You cannot identify where these are coming from, or they do not have a fixed position. Like, you can see here the urban street surface runoff, first of all. So surface runoff means, right, for example, it rains, right? So you say huge storm water going and entering our drains, or storm water going or entering a nearby water body. So that is known as surface runoff. Then we have one more term that is known as agricultural runoff. Runoff means, so the water, storm water, that whenever there is rain or over irrigation, the water that runs off into the nearby water body or the drains, that is known as agricultural runoff, right? Then suburban developments, like, so these are the rural homes, animal feedlots. These are all the examples of the non-point sources. Okay, now let's have a look. These are the sources. You know what can indicate pollution. How would you get to know whether there's pollution or not? So now let's start talk about the types of pollutants. So before studying the type of pollutants, I would tell you, or you should know what a pollutant actually is, right? What a pollutant. So in here we are talking in reference to the water pollution. The pollution causing agents are known as pollutants, right? In simple layman's language. So pollutants are any substance that causes pollution are known as pollutants. So here we're talking about the water pollutants. So I've just listed here the major water pollutants that we'll be talking about in our lecture. So first of all, the biggest, the first of all, the first type is the agrochemicals. So when I'm talking about the agrochemicals, are the chemicals which are used in agriculture industry or agriculture. Okay, and what are the major chemicals that are used in agriculture industry? Are the organic pesticides and chemical fertilizers. Okay, then we have sewage and wastewater. Third one is the industrial waste. Heavy metals are the inorganic waste that are a very big cause of worry. Then radioactive waste, thermal pollution, and marine pollution. So these are the various types of pollutants, like, or pollutions that we see, causes which cause pollution. So first of all, we'll be talking about the sewage. So guys, when we talk about sewage, what is sewage? Sewage is the wastewater which is entering the water bodies through the sewer systems. That is known as sewage. So sewage is having the human fecal material, human feces, the waste from our sewers, and they also have the waste waters from from other sources, or like from the wash basins, from the sinks, all the wastewater that goes there. Then, so that which without treatment, when it enters directly into a water body, then it becomes a cause of concern. So why are we worried, or why is it a cause of concern? So first of all, it has a lot of pathogens. So what are pathogens? Pathogens are disease causing agents or the microorganisms which causes disease like bacteria, fungi, viruses. So when like for example, let's take example of the sewage, the human fecal material, we have Escherichia coli, E. coli bacteria like is one of them. There is fecal coliform. Fecal coliform is one of the major contaminant from the sewage into the waters. So that that fecal coliform does basically, you know, it is present, like E. coli is present in our gut. So when with the feces is it enters the water body, so it causes a number of diseases, right? We have various other waterborne diseases are also there, which are caused by bacteria, fungus, and viruses like typhoid, jaundice, hepatitis, cholera. So even hepatitis, cholera, jaundice, these are even life-threatening diseases that we can get because of untreated water, right? Which is being dumped into the water bodies. Then there are other toxic constituents which can enter the water bodies, like heavy metals uh, and pesticides, which are being used at homes. They can also enter the water bodies. So there it becomes a very big problem. Okay, so as you can see that the first picture is the picture of Delhi from river Yamuna. You can see this, there is a huge drain. So this is a Wazirabad. So in the Wazirabad area, you know, Delhi has 22 major and minor drains, including the our own Najafgarh ka Nala. It's so huge. So at the point of Wazirabad, uh, all those major drains dump their waste into the Yamuna. So this is the picture taken there, and you can see the quality. This is the foam. So basically, not only the sewage water, but industrial effluents are also being added at this point, and the water quality of River Yamuna is, you know, starts to degrade from this point. So this is how these sewage directly dumps their waste into the water body. Not only the fresh water body, but also the oceanic water body. So now, one here I want to tell you about something. So basically, in with this picture, why are we worried about the addition of sewage? Because guys, sewage, as you know, that is an organic waste. So organic waste is biodegradable in nature. Okay, so as I have told you, there are two very important parameters of a water quality. One is the dissolved oxygen content, the other one is the dissolved oxygen, the other one is the biochemical or biological oxygen demand. So in a healthy water body, so here through this oxygen sac curve, I will show you how these dissolved oxygen and biochemical oxygen demand are related to each other. As you as you know that biochemical oxygen demand is an indicator of a polluted water, and dissolved oxygen, high dissolved oxygen amount or content or concentration is an indicator of good quality water. So a healthy water body will have a dissolved oxygen concentration of 8 to 15 ppm. So what is ppm? It is the unit to measure it. ppm means milligrams per liter. So if I'm saying the concentration of DO in a water body is 8 ppm, that means 8 milligram per liter of water. So a healthy will have 8 ppm or more than that. So as you can see here, a point source of like, what is a point source? A drain is adding sewage into the water body, as you can see here. So this is a flowing river. We have taken a river here, and this is a drain which is adding the pollution load into the water body, or sewage or organic waste load into the water body. So now what happens? This was a healthy river whose oxygen content was very good. So this red line of orange line is actually representing the amount of dissolved oxygen, and this blue line is representing the amount of dissolved BOD, or biochemical oxygen demand. So when the, now let's have a look how with these two properties the biodiversity of the river changes, or species diversity of the river changes. Now, when it was a clean zone, this was a normal clean water, some good indicator species or sensitive species were present here, like trout, perch, bass, mayfly. These were present here. So as soon as at this point down here, you see a drain started to add the pollution load into the water body, and with the flow of the river they started to move in the right hand side. So now what happened? As soon as the waste entered the water body, there was a sharp increase in the BOD levels, and from that point onwards the oxygen started to degrade, right? As you can see, as the, so now what happens here, now why there is sharp increase in the BOD? So what is BOD, guys? There is, in the ecosystem there is a class of organisms which are known as decomposers. They decompose everything, right? They decompose all the organic matter to clean up the environment. It's nature's cleaning mechanism. So in the water bodies also we have decomposers, the bacteria which will do it, the microorganisms which will do it. So now, first of all, when the water was clean, there was no pollution at all. So the, the decomposers were lying down calmly and neatly. So as soon as the pollution load added up into the water body, now the microorganisms were like, they have to decompose that they have to decompose that organic waste and have to make the water quality good again. So they start to metabolize it, they start to feed on it. When they start to oxidize it or decompose it, so when they work, so they require more oxygen to do that. For example, if you're sitting here just listening to this lecture, you're not doing any physical labor, you will not be breathing, you do not require huge amount of oxygen, you'll be breathing calmly. And as soon as you start to run or you do physical exercise, so you need more oxygen, right? You need more oxygen, you breathe heavily because your body needs more oxygen because you're doing physical work. Similarly in this case, when they are decomposing, the microorganisms are decomposing the waste, they require more oxygen. So because of that, the biochemical oxygen demand, or BOD, of a water body increases. So when the BOD increases, so obviously when the demand will increase and there will not be extra supply, so thus the concentration or the amount of dissolved oxygen present in the water body will start to degrade. So with the till some time, till some distance, the amount will keep on decreasing, and this amount will decrease to a very critical point. Critical point means the minimum amount of oxygen in a water body. Then after some time, what happens, as I have told you, this is a moving water body. So guys, there is a moving water body, and there are other reasons also to for the increase of the oxygen level in the water body. After some time, after reaching to a minimum point, the amount of oxygen will again start to increase in the water body, as you can see here, right? If we will not add, so basically here what happens, the dilution factor came into action. Dilution factor क्या होता है guys? Dilution तो आपको पता ही है, concentrated solution में more water add कर दो. So because there was only one source, this drain, so because river has huge volume of water, this dilutes after some, like at some distance from the source, this water starts to dilute. The other reason is, I have not talked about re-aeration. There is one more process. Like oxygen from atmosphere also enters into the water body. These things come into place, and this results in the increase of the oxygen amount again into the water body. And again, when the oxygen amount increases, and again because of the dilution, the BOD of the water again decreases. So this is how nature has a natural mechanism to clean up everything. Guys, if today also we will stop dumping our wastes into the water bodies, it will make these water bodies will make themselves clean again. So all of you would have seen, I can tell you the case study that we can talk about here is during the current pandemic, all of you would have studied a lot about the increase in the water quality of all the major rivers, including Yamuna and Ganga. When all the major industries were shut down, all the industries, everything was shut down. The Yamuna, even after having a lot of, barrages to stop its flow, it was much better. It had much better quality. The air were cleaner. So we had, so because nature has its own cleaning mechanism, if we still stop today, we can again reach that good water environment for us. So this is what is known as oxygen sac curve. So this curve is a relation between the simultaneous action of the oxidation of the waste, right, decomposition of the waste, and the replenishment of oxygen. Basically, it's simultaneous relation. So this tells us how can the river again nourishes it and can control it. This is showing the resilience of an ecosystem, of an aquatic ecosystem. So this is what, so that is why so as you can see in this figure also, when the water quality degraded, this became the septic zone, the fishes were absent, right? So fishes were absent because fishes are the sensitive species. Then the fungi and sludge worms and bacteria were present there. So here almost oxygen absent away. So the indicator species were there, which are the tolerant ones. Then again, when the water quality started, to flourish, or again the sensitive species came back. So this is how, telling you in easiest way how oxygen matters. So the other very big source of pollution, or basically according to a latest report published by Food and Agricultural Organization, which is also known as FAO, and the International Water Management Institute, IWMI, according to them, agriculture is the biggest source of pollution worldwide. Even in India also, our economy is basically agriculture based, right? So we are majorly dependent on agriculture. Our economy fluctuates a lot according to the monsoon also. It is how much good yield we got, right? So everywhere this is the biggest, because these add up to the non-point sources in the water bodies. So the major agrochemicals that add up to the pollution are pesticides and the chemical fertilizers. So now let's have a look at the pesticides. What are pesticides? So pesticides are the chemicals which are used to kill the pests. So the chemicals which are used to kill the pests. And what are pests? What are pests? Pests are anything, be it a plant or an insect or a bird or a rodent, animal, anything which is harmful for the crop or livestock. That is known as pest. So obviously guys, because we are seeing a huge population explosion, and we are seeing and we have to meet the food demands. So basically, so pests are the biggest threat to the crop yield, right? So recently we saw locusts attack, right? All of us saw a huge locust attack. So that's the reason. That's the reason, because there are frequent changes in the climate. So there were good. Those were the desert locusts, and because of good rain there, they flourished a lot. They reproduced. The number was so high, right? So when they attacked and they have eat, like that was a that was a menace everywhere. They brought the huge loss in the uh, crop yield. So for controlling of such pests, they are the biggest threat. These are the biggest threat to the our to in order to meet our food requirements. So we are forced to use these pesticides. These pesticides started with the first chemical pesticide, which was DDT. And in 1940s, Paul Hermann Muller also got Nobel for that, for this discovery. So after that, what was found, after some time, when he was given the Nobel, that why? Because when DDT was first of all, for the first time when DDT was discovered, the insecticidal properties of DDT were discovered. It was found out that it was very effective in Second World War. During the Second World War, it was very effective in tackling or killing the controlling the malaria and typhus. So everybody, agriculture industry also clamored for it. And then, but it was found that, guys, through this picture you can say that these pesticides were majorly broad spectrum. So FAO also has, supported that or said that only 1%. So whatever pesticide is being, sprayed on the plants, only 1% is actually reaches the target pests, and 99% goes to the environment, where environment, air, water and soil becomes a sink. So when it enters the soil and water, there is one problem which happens. These pesticides are actually divided into many types. Like the ones who kill the rodents are known as rodenticides, we have herbicides, we have insecticides. So there are various types of pesticides. The other class also, organochlorine pesticides, we have organophosphates, and we have carbamates. So these are the major classes of the pesticides on the basis of their chemical composition, because these pesticides are the synthetic chemicals which are being prepared in labs. So now what these pesticides do, these pesticides, yes, they are built around to actually attack the nervous system of the insects, but when they reaches the soil, water and air, they have a property which is known as bioaccumulation and biomagnification. So this is one of the biggest problem. So what biomagnification and accumulation is, I'll be telling you further in one of the slides that we have. Biomagnification, and so that means it'll when air, water and soil becomes the sink, as here we have. So when this water, for example, we have sprayed the pesticides in the fields. So when, as you can say in this picture, right, so agriculture fields have been sprayed with the pesticide. So now when it rains or if there is over irrigation, so two things happens. One thing is this excess of pesticides may go and contaminate the groundwater that we have, and the agriculture runoff may end up entering into a water body, nearby water body. And that, as you know, that those water bodies are used for the irrigation in the nearby agriculture fields. So when these pesticide laden water will be used for the irrigation, because of the property of biomagnification, they will enter the soil, and from the soil they will enter the crop. So why are we worried? Once they enter the crop, they are going to enter the food chain. So they enter the food chain and they will finally reach us, and in much more quantity. So their mechanism of action will be the same. They also affects our nervous system, right? Then we have, okay, so similar, I will tell you about some of the properties of pesticides here, like endosulfan. You would have heard about there is a case study of Kasaragod district. Endosulfan is a pesticide which falls in the category of organochlorine pesticides. So what happens that endosulfan, actually there is in Kasaragod district, was very famous for cashew nut farming. So with the rise in the use of pests, when there was not very good yield, what happened? There's a very small village in Kerala, and it's much away from all the haphazard, life, all the your what do we call it as city life. It was in the in such green area and much away from the cities. People were living in following the sustainable lifestyle. When then they got to know about a pesticide which is known as endosulfan. So when it was known, it was sprayed there. So when it was sprayed for the first time, so it was found that there is a huge, there was bumper crop that year. So after that, from this it once they had a very bumper, like they had bumper crop yield. After that, they used to, for the next 25 years, they used to spray the whole fields with the help of the helicopters, because there was a huge area where those cashew nut cropping was there. So they used, so after some time there was, and because it was very small village, so there was a local health center, there was a doctor. He said, uh, we he like he used to see there was a very big increase in the people, like many mentally retarded children were being born there, and he saw many physical abnormalities in the people were also coming. They got rotten foot or some problems in their teeth were molting or some problems like that. And the biggest he said that I was worried about it. Suddenly what happened? So such health issues when this is a village in such a green area, why it is happening? So then some research, like he raised the alarm, and then some research team went there. Then they found out, because of the excessive use of the endosulfan in the cashew nut farming. As I have told, only 1% pesticide reaches the target pest. 99% remains there. So, and actually, one of the problem with the endosulfan, which was an organochlorine pesticide, is that it has a very large lifetime. So, guys, in cases of substances or chemicals which have very long lifetime term is not used. We use half life for them. Half life means the amount of the time taken by the substance to remain half of its original concentration. For example, if I'm saying 10 years is the half life of DDT, for example. So half life ka matlab, if DDT was 1 kg in the starting, in the next 10 years it will remain 500 grams. Then in the next 10 years it will remain 250 grams. Then in the next 10 years it will remain 125 grams, and so on. So this is something, it has extended life in the nature. So if something is there for some small duration, you can skip it, but you cannot skip its exposure if it is there in the environment for a very huge amount of time. So that's what happened there. So guys, why it happened? So when the research came, it said that actually the endosulfan, the pesticides, are so harmful that, and one new thing was was also discovered, that this endosulfan was affecting the developing fetus inside the womb of the mother. The pregnant women who were coming in contact with the pesticide, definitely, because it was everywhere. It was in soil, it was in water, it was everywhere. So who were coming in contact with that, their children were born with you know mental disorder. Actually, endosulfan affects the nervous system, central nervous system of the babies. It was affecting the babies, the central nervous system. So it was also came to know that it was so lethal that it was affecting the children in mother's womb. So we have a term for such chemicals which can affect the developing embryo or the developing fetus. There's a term for that, which is known as teratogens. So teratogens, it was a teratogen, so that was very dangerous. So then it was basically, now officially endosulfan is also banned in India, but in India we do not follow all the rules. So basically, jugaad system, or India you can get everything. One more thing I can tell you about the pesticides, they cause cancer also, guys. As you know that Haryana and Punjab, during the Green Revolution, there was a huge boom in the Haryana and Punjab, because the very fertile soil is found there. So because of the Green Revolution also, there was huge pesticide use, and still there is huge pesticide use. And because of that, because pesticides also are very big reasons of causing cancer, we have a special train that starts from Punjab, which is known as Cancer Special. Because of that, every one person in every 20 people in Punjab is having cancer because of excessive use of pesticides. So these are the effects of these chemicals that we are using, and we are using directly in our foods that we are consuming without knowing its harmful impacts. The second thing that we have are the chemical fertilizers. Guys, now as you know that to achieve the food security, to achieve the food security, we have, because our we have taken everything out of our soil, right? The soil is deficient of nutrients, so we have to add chemical nutrients, right, in the form of fertilizers, जिसको हम हिंदी में खाद कहते हैं, right? These fertilizers are being added. So similarly, the similar fate of chemical fertilizers also happens. So these are the, so why I've used the term chemical fertilizers, these are not the bio fertilizers which are being regularly used. These are the chemicals which are prepared in factories, right? So they're made of chemicals to, in order to, as you must be knowing that there are 18 essential nutrients that plants, like humans, plants also require them for their healthy growth. Similarly, those are there. So now what happens, similarly, when the fertilizer is being used here, so now what happens with the chemical fertilizers when that is being sprayed in a field, right, in order to provide the nutrients to the soil. So what happens when they are sprayed there? So what happens, for example, it causes the nutrient bombardment in the agriculture field. What is nutrient bombardment? For example, plants need 1 gram of nutrient. Plants need 1 gram of nutrient per day, but actually because these are the chemicals, so they bombard it, they release 1 kilogram of nutrient there. So for example, whatever will be the requirement by the plant will take it out. So if we have given 1000 grams of nutrient and plant need only 1 gram of nutrient, so 999 is still lying there. For example, and if it rains or if there is over irrigation, so similarly the water will run off from the agriculture field, which will be laden with fertilizer, as you can see here, and that fertilizer laden water will end up in the receiving water or the nearby water body. Now here I want to talk about one thing. All of you must be knowing it, the most commonly used fertilizers, chemical fertilizers or fertilizers that we have is known as NPK, nitrogen nitrates. For basically the composition of it is having nitrate as nitrogen source, phosphates as phosphorus source, and potassium, K positive, as potassium source. So these are the essential nutrients for the growth of the plants. So that's why we provide these nutrients to the plants with the help of the fertilizer. So now what will happen? So when these so we're not worried about the other. So when these excess nutrients will flow down this river water, so water bodies, and especially stagnant water bodies like river, lakes and ponds, so what happens there, it causes a very big problem that you would have seen everywhere around you in the stagnant water bodies, known as eutrophication. Okay, so when excess nutrients, so this eutrophication is what? Eutrophication is known as excess nutrient enrichment of lakes. What is eutrophication? In basic terms, it is known as nutrient enrichment of lakes. And what nutrients? Nitrates and phosphates. Why nitrates and phosphates? As you can see, guys, here nitrates and phosphates we were given to the soil. Why we were giving it to the soil? Because to accelerate the growth of the crop plants, right? That's why we are providing it. Now what happens when this nitrates and phosphates enters the water body? There it causes a problem. There also it will enhance the production of the plants, or there is cyanobacteria. So now what it does, so now it accelerates the growth of algal bloom. So if I will talk about the definition of the eutrophication, so eutrophication means the increase in the amount of inorganic nutrients like nitrates and phosphates in a water body, which leads to the decrease in the depletion of the oxygen level, which finally results in the decrease in the species biodiversity of a water body. So this happens actually in the form of a definition, you would say. Now I'll explain it to you. So what happens, guys, you would have seen a lot of stagnant water bodies around you, the lakes and the ponds. There is a green mass like this picture I've shown here. You would have seen the people who are in Delhi who would have visited a lot of lakes like Hotch Khas Village Lake. Have you seen it? So basically, everywhere in India you go, this is the major pollution. You will. It's very rare to find, except for Pengonso Lake, Somoriri. So these are a few exceptions, or we have in mountains. So you will find majorly there the lakes and water bodies are covered with green mass. So what that green mass is, that is the result of eutrophication. So that is the management, so right, of lakes. That actually causes the bloom of algae, algal blooms, which is known as cyanobacteria or blue green algae. So its name is blue green algae, but वो green ही color में होती है. Green algae is good. They do the photosynthesis. They increase the amount of oxygen in the water body. But blue green algae is its opposite. So what does blue green algae? So whenever there is enrichment of nitrates and phosphates, like as you can say that in the first pictures, look at the first picture. So what is happening? For example, this was a lake, healthy lake. It was a good lake. So nutrient deficient lake. So when the runoff has led to the increase in the amount of nitrates and phosphates in this lake, so now what happens? This will lead to the formation of a green mass, which is known as harmful algal blooms भी बोलते हैं, and or will say it is blue green algae bloom, right? So now what it does, blue green algae will cover this, okay, cover this water body, or what it does, it will deplete the oxygen level because it doesn't produce oxygen. वो photosynthesis नहीं करती, it does not produce oxygen, it requires oxygen. So basically it will further increase the BOD of the water body, right? So एक extra pressure हो गया water body पे, so that BOD of the water body will increase. So when BOD will increase, so the dissolved oxygen level will also decrease. Okay, the DO level will decrease because it's inversely proportional. So now इसकी वजह से क्या होगा? This will result. So because of that, oxygen level of that water body will decrease. This will result in the loss of species diversity. The sensitive fishes will start to die because they require oxygen. They cannot remain in polluted atmosphere. दूसरी चीज जो होगी guys, वो होती है when that green mass, when there is bumper growth of the pollutants. The other thing is when that green algae will die, it will sink down the base of the lake. ऐसा तो होगा नहीं, like after being dead, that ऐसा तो होता नहीं, the lake will spit out the dead bodies. No, it will not happen. So the dead bodies of those algae will sink down the water body. What it does, it actually reduces the level of the, as you can see in the second picture, can you see the level or depth of the lake is decreasing. This is decreasing because of when that algae will die, it will sink down to the base. Now what will happen, guys? When dead algae will be there, that dead algae will be the organic waste. Now the decomposers will act on it to degrade it. When decomposers will act on it, it will again result in the increase of BOD. An increase of BOD to decrease of DO. So this will happen here. So in this way, what happens? So this is the way. This is also the one reason the eutrophic lakes, which have eutrophication, are also known as old and shallow lakes, right? Because of the accumulation of the debris of the cyanobacteria or the blue-green algae, those lakes become shallow. Okay. So one more thing I want to talk about. There are two types of eutrophication. One is the natural, of course. Yes, it is a natural phenomenon also, but natural phenomenon is very slow, right? There are sources like forest fire or soil erosion, weathering of rocks, which results in the addition of nitrates and phosphates, which is very easy. And one more thing I want to talk about, nitrates as well as phosphates, both are very important for the existence. Like if there is eutrophication, both enrichment of both the nutrients should be there. Okay. The other thing is cultural eutrophication, which is also known as man-made or artificial eutrophication. This is an accelerator, as you can see here. So detergents are also a very big, reason or cause of this pollution. What these detergents do? Detergents also have nitrates, right? Along with that, and guys, this is a very big. Currently, this is the business of the biggest land mafias. I have talked about in various lectures to my students, like in Delhi, in 90s there used to be more than 1,000 wetlands. Now there are less than or around 500 wetlands. A study has shown why, and the biggest reason for that is land mafia. They add the detergents, okay, synthetic detergents or the fertilizers directly into the small wetlands. Hannah, so what did this causes the shallowing of those water bodies, and when it becomes like the water, the level, sediment level, or the depth of the water body almost goes, reduces to none, then they just uses their contact and take that land and they make some property over it and sell it. So that is one, because of corruption it is happening there. So this is something which is very important and very biggest cause of concern, because in everywhere we are seeing eutrophication. And guys, the wetlands, you have already heard a lecture on the wetlands, where wetlands are a very important, type of ecosystem that we have. They are known as kidneys of the earth. Why they are so? Lakes are also kind of wetlands. Why they are known as kidneys? What kidneys do? They filter our blood. Similarly, these wetland act as a sponge, and they filter our groundwater. Groundwater, whenever groundwater recharge occurs, because of when the rainwater or water from surface percolates down. So these, important functions, reactions occur there, and they actually clear, um, you know, uh, filter out many pollutants of the water, and it prevents our groundwater from getting polluted. The other type of industrial waste, okay, so we have to prevent eutrophication, because it is the most visible and biggest cause of concern in India when we are talking about. So next type of pollutants are the industrial wastes. So how does industrial waste? We know a lot of synthetic organics, heavy metals, paints, detergents, dye. They are directly dumped into the water bodies. Okay, so here, as you can see that this, the first picture is from the Yamuna. This froth that you are seeing, so it's near, this picture was taken near Okhla. This is the Noida bridge. So this is near Okhla. So you can see the amount of froth that is coming out. This froth is because of the dumping of the industries that we have. You can say this is the paint, like, the heavily, actually these industrial waste also results in the heavily stained water bodies, because they have very, like, chemicals, paints, dyes. So that actually, and in such kind of, guys, in the lakes which are having inorganic nutrient pollution like eutrophication, you are at least seeing life. But in the industrial waste polluted water bodies, life becomes absent. Just look at the, you know you just look at the color of this water. No life, nothing can sustain here. So here I would like to talk about a study that was taken in the river Yamuna. So here, so there basically the study was done in Delhi University. So just to see, the whole stretch of Yamuna is about 22 kilometers. So that was done just to see, and 10 points are being made to do the study of the water. And after that study it was found out that the first 5 points of the Delhi, before the Wazirabad point, where all major, the Najafgarh Nala basically, there are few exit points and fixed, or we can say that there are few point sources which add pollution load into river Yamuna in the upstream. So guys, what is an upstream of a river, or when we are talking about Yamuna in Delhi? Upstream is the point of entering, the first half of the Yamuna river when it is entering the Delhi, and downstream is the second half. Okay, so the point of exit of river Yamuna from Delhi. So it was found that the water quality was much better at the upstream of Yamuna, though we know that a lot of pollutants are being added since it starts. The source of Yamuna is Yamunotri Glacier in Uttarakhand, we know. Then when, so a lot of, definitely a lot of pollutants are being added before that, but river dies in Delhi. All major minor, as I've already told you, 22 drains end up, and at Wazirabad point, Najafgarh Nala also enters the river, and there you can say this point, this Yamuna, the figure that is being shown here, this froth in the picture in which you're seeing the froth. Here, this is the, actually this was a downstream point of Yamuna. So you can see just the water quality. So the water quality was studied and the biodegradation was also studied. So I'll not be discussing about that. So it was found that from the fifth point, when the nalas, Najafgarh Nala is added up into the Yamuna, the water was so bad that it will cause many diseases if you will enter the water body. And even if at this point also, guys, in this froth also, you would have seen the photographs, the people were swimming, like small children were swimming there, and the people were doing like bathing. I don't know why we are, like, how and why we are doing that. That is study also, basically that study was on the agrochemicals, basically pesticides and heavy metals. So it was found that the first synthetic pesticide that I have just talked about, organochlorine pesticides, was studied in that study. Those organochlorine pesticides are the pesticides which are the resistant, persistent pesticides, means which stay there for long, which have long half life, which remains there forever, you can say, or very long time. So it was found out that the first DDT, which was banned in 1984 in India, its residues were still found in river water, as well as the soil of the adjoining fields which are being irrigated by the contaminated Yamuna water. Then it was also found that the heavy metal concentration was also very high. Though we have higher, stringent rules that only treated water should be end up into the rivers, then also, and everywhere it is being said that those rules are being followed, then also we saw high concentration of pesticides and heavy metals, pesticides like lindane, HCH, and your endosulfan and DDT were present in considerable higher amounts, which were above the lethal concentration, right? Which was very harmful for the health of the aquatic life and as well as the human health as well. So you can see that even if after the stringent rules, we are seeing the increase in pollution, because so basically, so this was the industrial and the agrochemicals. After the agrochemicals, there is one more cause of pollution in the water bodies, which is radioactive pollution. So radioactive pollution is the increase or the presence of the substances in water which are radioactive in nature. Now you'll talk about radioactive. What does radioactive means? Radioactive means which exhibit radioactivity. What does radioactivity means? Radioactivity means like which emit radiations. All of you would have heard about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? So there are few substance or radioisotopes in nature which exhibit radioactivity, which emits radiations alpha, beta, gamma rays. So basically those substances, if they are and when they are present in a water body, that is known as radioactive pollution of water, and it is there. It's not like it's not there. Okay. So first of all, let's have a look at the major causes of like radioactive pollution, how it reaches. So there's one of the major cause, that there is a lot of mining, uranium mines are there, because uranium is used in one of the alternative source of energy, which is nuclear energy. So there are uranium mines, and mines are a very big source. Whenever it rains, the runoff from the mines can may contaminate the water bodies. When it contains the water bodies, those bodies, either by direct consumption or after irrigation, they pollute the soils, and from soils it enters the food chain. Then we have nuclear weapon testing. When we have nuclear weapon testing, so the remains of the radioactive substances pollute the water and the soil of that area. Then nuclear accidents means you would have heard about Hiroshima, Nagasaki bombings. Nuclear bombings are there, and nuclear accidents like you would have heard about Fukushima Daiichi. In 2011, there was huge tsunami in Japan. All of you would have heard about it. So there's city. So there because of tsunami in Japan, there was Fukushima Daiichi reactor, which actually had an accident. So because of the tsunami, the water entered the nuclear reactor site. So because of that, there was immediate shutdown of the nuclear reactor, which led to the leakage of the radiations from there. So such reasons, radiations there contaminate the air, water, the area around the periphery, and it was the whole of the Fukushima, like the city was, you know, evacuated as evacuated. It has become a haunted city like Hiroshima, Nagasaki now. Then we have, right. So these are the major reasons. Unsafe disposal of radioactive waste as well. Guys, when in the nuclear reactor, the uranium is used as a fuel. So after, when it is used as a fuel, and if it is not, so that waste is known as high level waste. So it should be dumped by following all the processes very actively and with utmost safety. So if there is unsafe disposal of radioactive waste, that also leads to the pollution of the water bodies. So when we talk about the radioactive pollution, there are n number of substances which are there, and there is a natural cycle, disintegration cycle of uranium. So the substance that actually pollutes the water is iodine 131. So iodine 131 is what? Iodine 131 actually pollutes the water, right? There are various substances, but it has a very small half life of 8.1 days. So if it can enter the body by direct injection. So now what are the harmful effects of it? Why are we worried about it is, guys, as you know that our body also needs iodine, because iodine is required in thyroid gland for, right? So it is required in thyroid gland. So now what happens? When this radioactive iodine is being ingested by us through water, it will also go to our thyroid gland, because it is used in the synthesis of thyroxine hormone T3 and T4. Okay, so now this causes cancer of thyroid gland. Okay, so this is highly harmful radioactive pollution. I'll not talk in detail because we have to cover a lot. So this causes cancer, and radiations are very bad. Then we have a very big pollution, heavy pollutant, which are heavy metals. So heavy metals are what? The metals which have very high specific gravity are known as heavy metals, or which have environmental impacts. So when I'm talking about environmental impacts, it means not only human as well as the wildlife and the other life forms on Earth. So basically, heavy metal sources are industries, electroplating industry, lithium batteries, nickel cadmium alloys. Then we have tanning industry. Tanning industry means leather work. There are various sources of metals. So now what happens in case of heavy metals, guys? They not only contaminate the surface water, but they also contaminate the groundwater. So I'll just talk about a few heavy metals which are having important health impacts on us. One is mercury. All of you must be knowing about mercury. So what mercury does? Mercury is a metal, and in metallic form, it's not very harmful. The very toxic form of mercury is methyl mercury. Methyl mercury is uh, the organic form of mercury, which has caused havoc in 1950s in Japan. So methyl mercury causes a disease known as Minamata disease. All of you would have heard about this disease. It's a very frequently asked question in many of the competitive exams, and it's, I think, known to everyone. So what is Minamata disease? Now there is also a picture where I would be talking about the biomagnification that I talked about in pesticides. So the biggest problem with the heavy metals, as you can see here, is, guys, it has it along with the pesticides. Heavy metals also possess the property of biomagnification and or amplification or bioaccumulation. So what is this? Or we can say that, how does heavy metals reach our plate? Or here we are talking about, how does mercury reached our plate. So what happened, guys, in case of Minamata disease, I'm just telling you a story. Minamata disease was once Minamata is a bay in Japan. So this was first occurred or observed in Minamata Bay. That's why it got its name, Minamata disease, or also known as mad cat syndrome. So this what happened there, guys. There was a mercury chloride HgCl2 is a fungicide. As I have told you, pesticides. There is a class of pesticides known as fungicide used to kill the fungus. So there were along the banks of the coast of the bay, Minamata Bay, there were seed sterilization industries. Okay, those seed sterilization industries, what they did, they used to use mercury chloride for the seed sterilization so that it would not get fungus. So now what, and then after use, they used to, as you can see in the picture, they used to dump their wastewater directly into the bay. So now what happened when that mercury, that was the mercury. So that mercury chloride was used to go and get settled at the base of the bay. As you know that the oceanic water or the sea water, the base of the sea water is generally, guys, anaerobic in nature. So let me tell you what anaerobic means. There is absence of oxygen at the base of a lake, polluted lakes, or the base of the oceans, because it's so deep. So under the anaerobic condition, there is a bacteria which is active, which is found active, which are known as methanogenic bacteria, methane forming bacteria, or methanogens. So now what it does, that bacteria acted on that mercury chloride, and that converted that acted on that mercury, yes, mercury chloride, and that converted the mercury of that mercury chloride into methyl mercury. So basically, mercury in metallic form is insoluble in water. But what happened when it get converted by the bacteria into the methyl mercury form? That form of mercury was soluble in water. So when it was soluble in water, guys, so whatever was there in water, that mercury entered, that methyl mercury entered the food chain of the water body. From phytoplankton, it entered into the fishes. Now, so there is so now here I want to tell you about the property of biomagnification. So what is biomagnification? Biomagnification means, so first there are two things, bioaccumulation and magnification. So accumulation is increase in the toxic concentration of a toxic chemical at one food chain, one tropic level. Food chain के एक level पे, if there is increase in the concentration of toxic chemical, it is known as biomagnification. And generally this happens, and if there is increase in the concentration of a toxic chemical with increasing food chain, food level. For example, guys, methyl mercury came into the water. So from water, for example, 1 gram of mercury went into the small fish, and those small fish were eaten by the large fish. Okay, then whatever mercury they were eating, that was remaining in their body. So when they eat the fish, the 10 gram of mercury per fish was there, and when that 10 gram of methyl mercury was there in that fish, and when that fish was eaten up by the family, they were subjected to high level of methyl mercury. So this was found when so actually it was seen that I have shown you the first victims. So basically in 1956, a 5-year-old girl was examined, and it was found that her symptoms were very new. She had convulsions, not able, actually what it does, this enters, it affects the central nervous system. It blocks the nerve impulses. It blocks the sodium potassium pumps that we have in CNS, so जो nerve impulses जिससे pass होते हैं, the sugar, and blocks the sugar and sodium potassium pumps. So when it blocks it, so हमारे central nervous system में और हमारी body में there remains no coordination. When there is no coordination, it results in blurred vision, damage, total damage of central nervous system, paralysis, and to finally death. So this was when this was found out, then we got to know that's why it got the disease, Minamata disease. Similarly, we have other heavy metals also that have environmental implications, like uh, cadmium. Cadmium also causes a disease which is known as itai itai. Itai itai also was found for the first time in Japan. This it was in Japan. That's why its name was itai itai, means ouch ouch disease. It's known as ouch ouch disease because cadmium actually gets accumulated in place of calcium in our body. That causes, the bones become so brittle that they can break even when you see sneeze, and this, then ouch will come out of your mouth. So that's why it's known as ouch ouch disease. Then we also have the cases of the groundwater contamination of heavy metals, like arsenic. Arsenic is actually caused, contamination or pollution is caused because of over exploitation of water, over exploitation of groundwater. So if you will drink excess arsenic contaminated water, we can have many skin diseases, especially the blackfoot disease. The blackfoot disease is a disease in which your fluid becomes black. Then we can have in the fluoride pollution problem that is also caused by the over exploitation, or when the set because of contaminated sediments, that causes fluorosis, dental fluorosis, molding of teeth. That is called dental fluorosis, or skeletal fluorosis, which is known as molting of damage in your skeleton. So these are the. Then we have uh, then we have various, like, if I start to talk about it, copper also is one. Then we have, when we will talk about, the list is long, so I will stop here. So basically we have huge many sources which do the contamination of not only groundwater as well as the surface water. The other thing which is very important I want to discuss here is the thermal pollution. So what is thermal pollution? Thermal pollution is majorly caused by industries, of course, especially thermal power plants, nuclear power plants, steel plants, various industries. In the here, when the waste heat is dumped directly into a water body, so that results in a abrupt increase in the temperature of a water body by 10 to 16 degrees Celsius. So आपने भी देखा होगा, guys, all of you would have, felt that if there is sudden increase in the temperature, for example during the winters, if we step out directly from the room heated with a heater, step out in cold, we also get cough and cold. So right, it's so our body, so extreme temperature, we should not step in the extreme temperature very frequently. That affects our health. So we are very resistant uh, members of the climax community, I would say. So we are very resistant. So just think about the aquatic organisms. So when the thermal power plants, nuclear power plants, and other industries dump their heated water directly into the water body, due to the heat shock, a lot of fishes die, because 10 to 15 degrees Celsius temperature is huge. So when it sudden change occurs, it causes the death of the fishes and aquatic organisms. The other thing is, I just talked about the dissolution of gases is inversely proportional to temperature, right? So I will give you a very very good example, you will understand. So all of us like thumbs up, coca cola, soft drinks, जिनको हम cold drinks भी कहते हैं. So why they are called cold drinks? Because we like them cold. This of that sour taste. That sour taste is because of because the carbon dioxide present in that results in the formation of carbonic acid, which gives that fizz. So that fizz is present in the cold drink or cold soft drink. Why? Sorry. Cold soft drink, when it will be cold, the carbon dioxide will solubilize in the water and it will form the carbonic acid that will give out the fizz. Excuse me. Okay, so similar thing happens in case of what dissolved oxygen content. Oxygen is also a gas. When the temperature of the water body increases, the capacity of holding the dissolved oxygen in the water body also decreases. So when there will be less amount of dissolved oxygen, what will happen? Definitely the aquatic life or diversity will get harmed. Okay, the other thing is, guys, at high temperature, the metabolic activity or the microorganisms or the decomposers also increases. Why do we keep food in the fridge? To prevent it from getting decayed, because fungus and bacteria are more active at high temperatures. So definitely when the temperature will increase, the metabolic activity of the microorganisms will also increase. That means the BOD will increase. So when BOD will increase, that will result in the reduced dissolved oxygen. Dissolved oxygen gayi, to your aquatic food chain or food web will collapse. And as you all of you must be knowing that to maintain a healthy ecosystem, the food web or food chain should be healthy, so it should be properly maintained. And that's what is not going to happen in case of thermal pollution. The other kind of pollution, when we talk about biggest source, is we have talked about the groundwater pollution, we have talked about the surface, other fresh waters. Now the other surface water which body which are the main, which forms the maximum amount of water, is the marine water. So marine pollution is also one of the biggest problems that we are seeing these days. All of you seeing that यहाँ पे suspended solids, dissolved solids, oil spillage, marine debris, ocean acidifications, everything is there. So marine pollution is when particles, chemicals, and other pollutants okay, enter the oceans. That causes the marine pollution. And these are basically, guys, land-based sources, all of us know, right? So we are living on land and we are creating havoc because everything finally goes into the rivers, and from rivers it finally enters or end up into the oceans. And our why have used this logo? This is the biggest problem that we are seeing here. Our life, our marine life, has been replaced by trash. It is. So we'll be talking about these things in detail. So currently the biggest problem that we are seeing in when we talk about ocean marine pollution, so biggest problem or biggest threat of marine pollution is the oil spillage. We have seen a lot of oil spills in the history. And when we talk about oil spillage, and recently I've just, the first two pictures you're seeing here have been taken from a recent incidents which we have seen, and it's currently going on incidents, I would say. In the end of July, that Japanese ship that wrecked, that created havoc on the Mauritian island in the Indian Ocean, right? That Japanese ship leaked 1,000 metric tons of oil into the Indian Ocean. And as you know that it's a home of marine oceanic diversity. A lot of beautiful coral reefs are being found there. So it is still, we couldn't recovered from it. It is still going on. And 2-3 days back there was a news that 20 to 30 dolphins, this picture is from the recent event, 20 to 30 dolphins and 4-5 whales have been died till now, have died till, these are the big fishes, and a lot of small fishes and aquatic organisms have also died because of that oil spill. So now what happens, what is oil spillage actually is? So this happens because, guys, because of offshore oil drilling, or whenever there is, if there is some ship has sunk, or if there was some carrier of crude oil, you understand, the petroleum, from one place to another. Sometimes some accidents happen which led to the leakage of oil into the water bodies. So now these will give you pain, these pictures. This is what happens to the aquatic organisms, these the birds. What happens, you can see the tortoise, seals. Basically what happens, as you know that the oil is immiscible in water. So basically it covers a layer over the ocean. It covers a layer, and the other thing is there are a few components of the ocean, of the oil, which are soluble in water, that created more havoc. So when there is a coverage of, so that actually clogs the gills of the fishes, so they're not able to breathe. Then they also, the other thing is their particles also enter into the water body, so they are very harmful for the aquatic life. So that is what happens. That's why we see a huge loss of the diversity, aquatic diversity in the oceans. Then the other thing, which is a very big problem in case of marine pollution, is the marine debris. All of us know, these pictures say it all. And the biggest problem is the plastic pollution that is being taught a lot. So 2018, the theme of the World Environment Day was plastic. Say no to plastic. So why say no to plastic? All of you know that it's not totally, you cannot say it's non-biodegradable. Why they said that it's non-biodegradable? Because it remains there in the environment for hundreds and thousands of years, and all of us know that when we dump everything, they end up in the water bodies, in the oceans. And that's what you can see. A few pictures, these are showing what they are doing to the water bodies. You can discriminate, but these animals cannot. And in the recent lecture also, in Mr. Saurabh Malhotra's lecture, he showed a very good documentary. You can see there, they cannot distinguish it. We have to do it. The plastic you use once tortures the oceans forever. That's why in our college also we are following this theme. We're working on integrated waste management, and we are trying say no to the plastics. We are doing our bit. So this is something we can do on our individual level. We should not be stay dependent on the government for doing it, because they create havoc on the other life forms. So the other thing that is very much marine pollution, can be a part of marine pollution, is the ocean acidification. So ocean acidification is also because of anthropogenic factors, various anthropogenic factors. How does ocean gets acidified? Ocean gets acidified because of the excess dissolution of carbon dioxide into the oceans. Acidification means the pH of the ocean will decrease, right? So it should be slightly alkaline, 8.3 to 8.4 होना चाहिए. अब उससे कम होगा तो it will lead to the acidification. So and major reasons are anthropogenic. So the reason is the same. How this acidification occurs, the reason is the same what we just talked about in case of a cold drink. So basically this carbon dioxide, CO2, that you're seeing here, when it has the gases has the property of dissolution in water. So when the CO2 dissolved in H2O, it forms carbonic acid, H2CO3. This carbonic acid actually results in the release of H positive ion. When H positive ion increases, guys, when there is increase of pH of 1 point on the pH scale, decrease of pH of 1 point in the pH scale, it actually increases the acidity by 10 folds. You can just understand. And why are we worried about the ocean acidification? Because guys, these acidification of many sensitive species are there living in the oceans. Those species may die because of that. And that will lead, so like coral reefs are also known as, all of you would have heard about corals. Coral reefs are also known as the rainforests of the ocean. Why do we call them rainforests? Because they emit oxygen, like as rainforests are one of the biggest emitter of the oxygen, they are also the biggest emitter of the oxygen in the ocean. So when we talk ocean and open ocean are the biggest source of oxygen, because of the coral reefs are one of the major reasons for that, because most biodiverse zones are the corals. What are corals? Coral reefs, so they are the cylindrates which actually have this carbonate depositions. So ये जो carbonate deposition होते हैं, calcium carbonate deposits, in those calcium carbonate deposits, zooxanthellae, there's an algae that lives in symbiotic association with it. So what happens? So zooxanthellae, how this relation is symbiotic? Zooxanthellae is living over the corals. So corals are giving them a place to live, and in turn, zooxanthellae does the photosynthesis and provide energy to it, food to it. So it's a kind of, so when the carbon dioxide is increasing, so one thing is happening is the global warming. So when global warming occurs, those splitting of those corals split out those algae. So when algae leaves the corals, and the corals, colors of the corals is because of that algae. And when corals leave that algae, they again start to become white. That is known as coral bleaching. And once the ocean gets acidified, because of acidity, those corals get dissolved. And once the coral get dissolved, the zooxanthellae will not have anything to come back to. So that is why ocean acidification is also a very big problem. So these are the major problems about the water pollution that we see. And now looking at the control measures, when we talk about, so we have policies to control it, but as I have told, we have the stringent rules are there, but there is no strict implementation of that. So we have already discussed in previous lectures about the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974. It came in which dealt with the establishment of the pollution control boards, which is currently CPCB, and they had to give do a yearly analysis of various water bodies, the groundwater, and they have to make those reports public also. So, and they also had set this, various labs had been set up under it, and there were also strict rules which were given out under this rule for the protection of water against pollution. After that, we had Environment Protection Act, as we have discussed about already. So everything, we have policies, but now still we are seeing a lot of pollution. And if we will talk about the control measures, so control, you cannot control it until you're not self-aware. You cannot be dependent on the government. You have to do it on your own. So first of all, let's talk about on the basis of various first thing that is there, as we have already discussed, there are rules, but there is no strict implementation. There is something called environmental auditing, guys. So that is being done by pollution control boards in case of all the industries. So every year it is done. It is being done. A person from pollution control boards will go to the factories to see how much pollution, and it should like an audit. It should be surprised, but because of corruption, it's not. People already informed that we are coming, and they take money and they give clearance to the industries that they are not polluting the air, water, and soil. So strict implementation should be there, and corruption is a very big factor in the pollution. So as we know that the chemical fertilizers and pesticides were a very big cause, are a very big cause. So we can replace them with biofertilizers like nitrogen fixing bacteria, phosphate solubilizing bacteria, use of these things, and biopesticides, or we can say that judicious use of at least agrochemicals should be done to increase that. Then in case of separate sewage, there should be a separate drainage of sewage and rainwater. The other thing is, there are rules for the industries that they have to treat their waste before dumping it directly into the water bodies. So the proper or setup of wastewater treatment plants and sewage treatment plants should be there. Then we can see that the other thing is dumping of toxic, hazardous waste and sewage sludge should also be banned in the oceans. See, when we talk about oceans, see, if you are throwing your waste, we see everything is connected. Rivers get polluted, rivers enter, dump their waste into the water, like rivers finally end up into the oceans. So everything is connected. Once, if we are successful in controlling the pollution of the rivers, half half the battle is being won. So we will also reduce the pollution of pressure on our oceans. So we should work on it. So if the other thing is dumping of toxic, hazardous waste should also be banned. So neither oceans nor the rivers nor the lakes, and nowhere we should not dump anything anywhere. So when we talk about these things, heavy metals, so one of the major sources for the heavy metals and other these radioactive substances is also the mining area. So basic what we can do it. So because of the mines, runoff from the mines also end up into the water body. So here government should also come in action. So they should allow, or some provisions have been made to to restrict the direct flow of the waste waters or the contaminated waters into the water body. Or even if we will stop disposing the industrial waste directly into the water bodies, we can do a lot. So these are the things that we should work upon. Okay, and what we can do is, so this is how we can control it. And when we talk about when we talk about the oil spills, so in case of oil spills, there is a problem. If we oil spills initially used to be controlled by with the help of the detergents, because detergent can absorb it, but it was found that detergents have nitrates, right? Nitrates and phosphates, so that they used to cause the water pollution, eutrophication in ocean as well. So now an upcoming source, and in case of water pollution, a very good source of clearing, doing the restoration or reclamation of the polluted water bodies is the use of bioremediation. Bioremediation means use of biological organisms in controlling the pollution. Because first one is, this is a very environment friendly, this will not cause pollution. The other thing is, it is economic in nature. The other thing is, and we should try to work in, finding out the remedies from the environment itself. So these things we can do. Fine. Is my screen visible? Yeah. Hello? Hello?
Ma'am, now it's not visible. It
Is it
was
visible?
visible earlier. No,
No.
not now. Not right now.
There's some technical issue, I guess. Why is it? Is it अभी भी नहीं? Is it now visible?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible now.
Okay, so that's all. Thank you. Slide only is left. Thank you so much. Now the house is open for the questions. Whatever your doubts are, you can talk about that, or if you have some suggestions or your views on anything on water pollution and any doubt, you can ask me. You can also unmute it. Hello. Am I audible? Anyone having any doubt or any type of question on anything, you can ask. Hello, Narendra Kadela. Hello, ma'am. Today's lecture was very interesting. My question is, every polluted water after mixing looking like greenish in color? No, not every polluted water. सी जो बेसिकली जो ग्रीनिश वाटर की हम बात करते हैं, दैट आई हैव आल्सो शोन, दैट इज बेसिकली ड्यू टू द bloom of blue green algae, that is also known as cyanobacteria, and the biggest reason for that is, and that is basically caused by nutrient enrichment. So when we talk about nutrient enrichment, that nutrient enrichment is nitrates and phosphates basically, and those nitrates and phosphates result in the that growth of that is also known as uh, toxic algal bloom. Toxic algal bloom बोलते हैं, and yes, and टॉक्सिक एल्गल ब्लूम अगर ओशंस में होती है तो दैट इज रेड टाइड्स, आपने सुना होगा, दैट इज देन द वाटर बिकम्स रेड टाइड्स, रेड कलर. So that is also caused by dinoflagellates, and the problem with that, and it is ऐसा नहीं है कि हमें अगर दिख रहा है कि सिर्फ green mass है, so that will not be creating any problem. Let me tell you one thing: such water bodies are very harmful because ये जो blue green algae होते हैं, these releases a toxin, neurotoxin, which is known as saxitoxin, that actually may trigger asthma, and if in humans as well. So it's toxic to humans as well as the aquatic water bodies as well. Not every. I have also shown the water bodies which were of different color. That was basically the water bodies which were heavily stained with industrial waste. Industrial waste organics give very bad brown or reddish color or to the water bodies. Any other doubt on anything? No doubt. You're sure? If you have no doubt, so we'll stop here. Okay. Fine then, we'll stop here. So that was the first lecture under the theme environmental pollution. That was the overview of the water pollution, and in the further lectures we'll be talking or discussing about air pollution, air, soil, and other types of pollutions as well. So thank you so much, and we'll be uploading the second lecture, the assignments of the second week. So I hope all of you would have submitted the assignment for the first week by now. And then please do submit the assignment of the first week and as well as the second week on time, because they are very important. And so see you in our next class, and please keep a tab on. So we'll have our next lectures on 5th of September and 6th of September. 5th of September is going to be a very interesting lecture on the soil and soil related pollution. So Professor Radheshyam Sharma from Department of Environmental Studies, University of Delhi, will be delivering the lecture here. So you can ask like a lot of questions about the research topics as well. So these are the things that we'll be talking about in our upcoming lectures. So thank you so much, and please keep a tab on the course website. Thank you. Thank you so much. You may leave the class now.